All right, Christopher, principal of the Success School, back with BRCJ. Chris and Andy, you guys are going to talk a little bit about what you surveying, and welcome today.
All right, thank you. Hi, my name's Andy Knust. I am a civil engineer at Bledsoe Riggert Cooper James. That's what BRCJ stands for.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah. Well, those guys are the owners and proprietors of our company. And so I'm a civil engineer, and Chris here, he's a surveyor. And we also do GIS, which is Geographical Information Systems. So civil engineering, for those of you who don't know, what we do is basically, we design everything that you see when you step outside. And roads, bridges, utilities, a lot of things you don't see that are underground, like storm drains, sanitary sewers, electrical infrastructure, gas lines. Civil engineers design big stuff. Yeah, and mechanical engineers tend to design smaller, more detailed stuff. Like you just heard from the engineers at Cook Medical. They design really, fine, detailed stuff. The civil engineers, we design the macro, big engineering stuff. And at BRCJ, we're a company right here in Bloomington, and we've designed a lot of the projects that you see when you travel around right here in our city. Like, for example, I know we have a lot of students tuning in from Bloomington High School North and Bloomington High School South and Edgewood High School, right? And we've designed projects at all those schools, like the new baseball fields at both Bloomington South and Bloomington North. We designed the layout for those nice synthetic turf fields and the new dugouts and how the drainage works underneath of those facilities. So that's a large part of what we do actually for the schools is new athletic facilities and also new additions. Like at North High School, we just designed, we worked with the architects who do the building design. We did all the exterior design around that new swimming pool addition at Bloomington High School North. And at Richland Bean Blossom, we've been working on the field house addition at the football field there. And there's a new administration building that we're working on. So we've been involved in all kinds of projects for all kinds of local entities, including IU, all kinds of projects that IU utilities and new facilities at IU and all over town and all over the state. So that's largely what I do as a civil engineer. Chris, you want to talk to us about surveying?
So my name again is Chris, and I'm a professional land surveyor, which means that I'm licensed through the state to practice as a land surveyor. Land surveyors do all kinds of different things. When Andy talked about the projects that we've done at different schools and around the town, the first step in that process is to get a topographic survey. So a land surveyor will go out and locate existing buildings, driveways, roads, underground infrastructure. We'll call in utility locates and send a crew out to locate underground water lines, sanitary lines, stuff that people don't know is there. But we'll end up with a map showing all those things so that the design engineer can know what he's dealing with and know where to put new facilities. We also do boundary surveys. If someone owns a piece of land and they want to put a fence around it, they'll call us to mark the corners and the lines of their property. If they want to sell a part of their property, they'll call us to survey it and write a legal description for that property so they can take it to an attorney and have a deed prepared to sell a part of it. So we do a lot of different things. Also on the projects, Andy has some plans here. When projects go from design phase to construction phase, we will be the first ones on site to lay out just drive stakes where a road, a building, a parking lot, a sanitary sewer system, a water line will go. So the construction company relies on the surveyor. The design professional relies on the surveyor. We just have our hands in a lot of things. We use a lot of sophisticated equipment. Right here, we have a total station set up with a prism Every line that we survey has obviously 2 points. And between those 2 points, we need a distance and an angle or a direction, north, south, east, west, or somewhere in between. So this total station and this reflector, the total station will send a laser to the prism, and it will measure the time it takes to go from here back to the total station, and it will calculate a distance. And it will also keep track of angles as you turn the total station. It will keep track of the angles, so it knows the angles between every line that we locate. We also use GPS equipment, so we do a lot with satellites. So there's all kinds of technology involved. A lot of it is math, but a lot of it is also common sense in dealing with the different professionals and the different landowners that we deal with. Communicating with people. We have to communicate with landowners if we're doing a boundary survey, design professionals so they understand what we're showing on our surveys. Construction professionals, when we set a stake, they have to understand what that stake means and how to use that stake, or it's worthless to them. So technological skills are extremely important. Personal communication skills are vitally important. Our specific company and has crews today in working in 3 different states, I believe. We're licensed in 5 states. So we do a lot of work locally, but surveyors have the ability to travel if they want and spend time seeing all parts of creation. It's just amazing the places that you can go as a surveyor. So I would encourage anybody to look into it.
Yeah.
You want to talk about plans?
Sure. Yeah, I brought with us today just a small example of some of the projects that we've designed and surveyed. So Chris mentioned that, like, we start with the topographic survey, which shows, what's on the land now. This is what used to be Tri-North Middle School. And so we did the whole survey here of all the existing features, and all these lines here are the topographic contours. As most of you know who've been out to Tri-North, it's not a flat site. Like, this is where the old good sledding hill was, right? Yep. And so it was a challenge to figure out how to fit the whole new school. We worked with the architects to figure out how big that new school needed to be, and how was that going to fit on the site here. And so here's the plan that shows the new school. You can see it's this big white spot here is the new school, and we designed all the roads that go around it, the driveways, the utilities that connect to it, and feed it with clean water, take the dirty water away, drain off the rainwater when it rains. And so we look after everything that happens on the site. And it was a challenge to figure out how to build this whole new building here while keeping the pre-existing school operational until, just this year, the new Tri-North Middle School opened up, and students are now using that school, and the old school's been demolished. Now what we're doing is we are figuring out how to fit a new football field up here, and with a track to fit all the track and field events, with some parking and some driveways to come around it with all the school buses, and get the students and the faculty all in and out and have places to park. So that's all, fitting all these different pieces together is one of the great challenges of doing the design work, which I really enjoy doing the design. Like, every project is kind of like a new puzzle to figure out and make all these different pieces fit together. And, a lot of this involves mathematics. You got to understand, like the storm drainage, for example, is one of my favorite things. I got a master's degree in hydrology to figure out how to do all this storm drainage stuff, but you don't need a master's degree to do it, really. But it takes, a bit of math to figure out how many acres of drainage area are contributing to these storm drains that collect, the runoff from the parking lots, and how big those pipes need to be to carry that rainwater down and around and into the detention ponds down here. So that's a lot of math that I employ every day, and computer models to help me, figure out the slopes of these pipes and how they can cross with the water utilities. And that was a big deal on this project, was was the potable water supply and working with the city of Bloomington utilities about new clean water supply to the building and how much water they needed for, the bathrooms and everything inside the building, as well as the fire protection, which is an even bigger deal because there's a lot of sprinklers in here. So if something catches fire, the sprinklers go off and help to quench that fire. And we've got hydrants all around. So figuring out how much water we need to feed all the fire protection and all the hydrants, and making sure that the fire trucks can get in here and access all those hydrants. That's a big part of the job. And then once we get everything designed, like Chris mentioned, we work with a contractor like Milestone. You just heard from Milestone Construction, and many of our projects that we've designed, we work with the owners to get a contractor on board. The contractor will say, "I'll build that project for you for, here's our price," and we'll help the contractor to, make sure they're building the project according to the design, and we'll send the surveyors out there to mark in the field where every storm drain should go and where all the curbs and the sidewalks and everything should lay out. So it's a big collaboration between the engineers and the surveyors and the contractors to make sure that these projects get built.
So Andy, if we're looking at the Tri-North project, which is a good one here, it's successful. We work with Tri-North and that crazy landscape. Beginning to end here, and within your role, how long what kind of length of process is that?
Well, before they started breaking ground here, we were working with the architect at least 2 years before they started breaking ground. And I think the architects were there with the Monroe County Community School Corporation, the superintendent and the teachers and principals and everything, figuring it out, what they wanted their new middle school to look like, probably 5 years in advance of that. And we came in a little bit later once they figured out, roughly how big they wanted their building to be. And then we came in and worked with the architect to do all the site design. So yeah, a couple of years before they started breaking any ground with the shovels.
And Chris, you mentioned before a little bit about these instruments and the laser and measuring. Give us an application where you're using that, as far as your surveying, kind of bring it down to a specific project or land that you're sort of using it to kind of give it a little bit more feel.
So probably the easiest thing to think of is a simple lot in Bloomington in town. Usually has a house on it, a garage, a driveway. If it's a rectangular lot, it's going to have four property corners. Hopefully each one of those will be monumented with normally a rebar in the ground, sometimes a stone. You never know what's going to be there. It's whatever the previous people left. So our job will be to figure out where those actual corners are. So we'll take our instruments out, be it total station and a rod or a GPS, and say we're using this system here. We'll set a random point. We'll drive a nail on the ground and we'll set the instrument up on it. And we'll use a metal detector to find rebars in the ground. When we find one, we'll set this prism up on it and we'll turn our instrument to it, take a shot on this, and it'll tell us a distance and an angle. And at that point, that's all we know. We know that from there to here is 50.07 feet or whatever that number is, and what that angle is from where we called north. So then we'll go to the next corner with our metal detector and try to find another corner. And if we find it, we'll move our rod down to it and do the same thing. We'll measure a distance and an angle from there to it. So now, mathematically, we have a triangle. So we can put coordinates on that point, and using simple geometry and a little bit of trigonometry, which is much simpler than it sounds, we can calculate perfect. We can calculate coordinates on the two rebars that we found, the two property corners, and where our instruments is set. So then we continue the process and we You know, if our instrument's in the center of the property, we'll look for a corner down here and a corner down here, do the same thing. And when we have all those angles, we have a geometric shape for that lot. With internal angles that we've measured and calculated and distances. So with simple math, simple geometry, we now have a distance and a bearing from here to here, here to here, here to here, and back to there.
And perfect application of geometry that all students that are watching this now
Yes.
have done and using that in the real world.
Yes, and that's the beauty. To me, that's one of the beauties of surveying. You can see math come alive. Talking about Tri-North, you all know, or a lot of you know, the difference in elevation from the old school to the new school. Well, we not only,
Yeah, it's about 40 feet.
yeah, so we not only placed that new building horizontally when we staked it out, but Andy had to calculate, you know, when they start digging footers for the new building, they come up with footers and they come up with walls, and that has to tie in somewhere to an elevation. So we also carry elevation on all of our projects so that not only horizontally can we calculate where things are, but where they are vertically on the face of the earth.
Well, gentlemen, Chris, Andy, BRCJ, thank you for coming today. Very interesting. What math we all can practically use in water management, right? That's a big thing of what you're doing as a civil engineer. We'll be back in just a little bit.